Hello everyone, welcome back to Castlevania Portals of Ruin. In the last part we did some side quests, we explored the rest of the castle as much as is available to us at the moment. In this part we are going to conquer the next painting world before we can progress the main story. We saw this painting world in part 3 or 4. Anyways, it's located, well, you can see it on a map, it's sort of in the tower area. This is the Nation of Fools. It is a circus slash carnival theme painting world. More circus than carnival really, but you know, I sort of just equate both of them as the same thing for some reason. Anyways, this world, you've got a lot of circus themed enemies and traps and such. Well, the traps, I don't know, hanged bones. I wouldn't call it really circus themed, but it's like, you got sort of look more like macabre slash jolly things, such as clowns and, you know, those hanged bones. Clowns have always been like, you know, a common sort of theme that's very commonly, you know, feared among, you know, children and even older people. It's like, it's a normal phobia. Myself, I'm not afraid of clowns. I mean, I don't like clowns, but it's not like I'm really afraid of them unless they're, you know, presented to me in a very scary way. Here we have a $2,000 bag. It is one of the higher pickupable currency pickups, and you know, it looks like a golden dollar bag. They are quite rare. They don't drop from enemies as far as I am aware. You can only find them in specific spots, and once you pick them up they will be gone. We also have these fire wheels, basically a sort of obstacle where you have to wait and you can go through the parts that don't have fire in them. It lets you explore different areas. It's kind of a nice way to turn an intersection or a T-junction into a platforming obstacle. Otherwise, I really like the look of this painting world. You have this kind of like, well, I mean, the theme is obviously based around like sort of a circus, but the actual environment looks more like a burnt down city, or just like a city that's been struck by disaster. And I guess the wacky spin on it is the fact that it's you know, rotated around, so you know, messes with gravity and stuff. But, you know, I think this is a really neat area in terms of design, because you've got all these like houses in the background, and then you have small intersections like these, which, I mean, they don't look extremely interesting, but you know, they serve a purpose. And then you also have these areas that's like, oh, it's the backstage of, you know, a circus stage. And then you have these sort of axe traps that rotate, or yeah, that rotate around. They do a lot of damage. which you will most likely see a bit later, but they are quite annoying. Especially in some areas where you're basically stuck in between two of them, and there's not much room to move. And we will be seeing some of those later on. The Nation of Fools is also the first area to feature enemies that drop card suits, like the Joker, the Diamond, Spades, etc., etc. The other two ones as well. The Coppelias, these line dancers, drop the Diamond, I think, and the Clowns drop the Joker. Why I'm talking about the card suit is because they will be important for a side quest coming up. And here we have the introduction of Medusa heads. They have been prominent since the very first Castlevania game, in which they were a huge obstacle, because in the first Castlevania, Medusa heads would often be placed in spots where if they hit you, you would either fall down into a pit or, you know, take massive damage by falling into spikes or other traps. Whereas in these games, the open world exploration Castlevania games, they're not as dangerous, because, well, I mean, for one, they don't do much damage, and you don't. The levels aren't designed around the fact that they will knock you into traps and such. The enemies we just saw were flying armors. They actually have a weapon drop that's very, very good, and I will be getting that, but not until the end of this video. When you see me walk past that room and that something is cut out, it means that I spent some time grinding there, but I just went back and forth periodically grinding throughout my whole trip to this painting world. Unfortunately, I did not get it on my first time grinding, but as I said, we will be seeing their weapon drop pretty soon, at the end of this video actually. Flying armors have also been in the open world Castlevania exploration games since Symphony of the Night, I would say. Yeah, I think they may have been in some of the 2D side-scrolling action games as well, but I'm not sure. I know for sure that the flying armor was a boss in Dawn of Sorrow, I think. Also, looking at the map, you can see that the Nation of Fools is, well, right now it's kind of hard to see, but I mean, if you fill in the blanks, you can tell that the whole area is pretty much symmetrical, with rooms being similar on both sides, but, you know, being rotated the other way. Obviously, the enemy and trap placement is different on both sides, but otherwise the actual room geometry is pretty much the same. And I think that's pretty neat. It sort of shows how, you know, this painting world is twisted in its own way, and considering that it's like a circus where you think about clowns and other demented stuff like that. The lion dancers, Fleamen, all these sorts of enemies, and, you know, this painting world is just kind of like twisted and crazy in its own way, and I think that's, you know, I'm not saying there's some deep like meaning to it or whatever, but that's just sort of what I take from it. Everyone has their own interpretation, of course. And You can see the square in the middle, that is where we'll be fighting the boss, but we have to get in there from above, unfortunately. There is no way to get in there from any of the other sides. That's just sort of like a foreshadowing, and I think that's a nice, that's a pretty cool thing to do as well. Because in the middle room, where you fight the boss, there's an item on the ground. And you can see it when you walk past that middle room. Like when we walked past there the first time, we saw there was a pickup in the middle of that room, and you're thinking, oh, that looks, you know, interesting, I should try to get there. So it sort of outlines the goal for this painting world, which is, oh, you have to go here to pick up this strange item, which is important for story progression, and we will be seeing that once we fight the boss. Another thing I should note also is that the Nation of Fools is often the second painting world that most people go through. Or at least in my case, the first time I played through this, I went through the Nation of Fools as my second painting world. Whereas in this playthrough, I went through the Sandy Grave first. I think it's just because the Nation of Fools painting is closer than the Sandy Grave one, and you can get there with less exploration. And you only really need to use the footstool to get there. Otherwise, the Sandy Grave is, I mean, it's on a linear path, so if you're doing more exploration, you'll probably go to the Nation of Fools first, and then the Sandy Grave. Whereas, if you're just going in a straight line, you'll get to the Sandy Grave first. You know, I think it's a very nice like design touch is how you can choose which world to enter first. Other side-scrolling open world Castlevania games often had a very strict linear progression, or I mean at least Order of Ecclesia did, where you would like go through level by level instead of you know, going through. Because you had sort of a stage select thing there, where you just choose a level, and then when you beat that level, you'd unlock the next one. And here we find another co-op attack. It's called the Volcano, and it does what the description says. It summons an erupting volcano. It basically creates a volcano on screen which shoots burning rocks which do damage to enemies. And there we got the skill drop from the Armor Knight, which is the Javelin. It's pretty decent weapon. It basically throws a spear in an arc, and it, you know, it does pretty good damage if you manage to hit enemies with it. Otherwise I won't really be using it that much, except later on when we need to use it to complete a certain quest. As for the geometric design of this area, I really like it, because just taking like the different rooms and twisting them in different, you know, degrees to make them either upside down or tilted 90 degrees really like changes up the platforming in a way, because it forces you to think about platforming in a different way as a game designer. Not necessarily as a player, because for a player it's still just, oh, go through here and then go through there. But as a game designer, it really makes for some interesting just like platforming challenge just to think about, oh, if we tilt it here, then they can jump here, and then they can access some areas that they could not in the non-rotated version of the room. And there we can see the golden item pickup there in the middle of the room, which is just kind of like, oh, it's an item pickup in a huge empty room, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. So it's obviously going to be the reward for a boss fight. I mean, that's just anyone who's like played a game before, who walks into a huge empty room with a single item pickup is like, oh yeah, that's probably gonna be a boss fight or whatever. Especially in, you know, terms of these like Castlevania games, you can absolutely tell. Also, you may have noticed I made a mistake in editing here, where I accidentally reverted back to an old save file, where I did not explore the upper portion of the map. Nonetheless, I didn't really miss anything major, so, and I will be going back there either way. Although this time it'll only be to face the boss when that comes to fruition. I've also got a comment on the music of this area. It really feels like a sort of circus carnival theme, but it also sounds kind of like you know, fits in the Castlevania theme as well. But, you know, kudos for the people who made the music for this game and the other Castlevania games. Castlevania has always had really ass-kicking soundtracks that convey a lot of like feeling in regards to the sort of areas you're traversing through. Unfortunately, I can't talk about the music in Lords of Shadow because I have not played those games. I might check them out later on, maybe for a future playthrough. As you can tell, this I'll mostly be doing like DS games as well as I mean Castlevania games, I guess, because I am working, well, my first playthrough now is Castlevania, so I might continue on the Castlevania theme. I will definitely be doing playthroughs of both Order of Ecclesia and Dawn of Sorrow, although those will come way later in the future. Right now I would like to finish this up and then focus on other projects, just to sort of clean my palette. And here we have another white dragon. Another thing that's pretty interesting is that since you can go to either Nation of Fools or Sandy Grave first, the enemy selection is mostly the same in both the areas, which I think is very cool. So it's kind of like, oh, doesn't really matter which area you go to first, you'll be facing mostly the same enemies, with some exclusive enemies, of course, like the Sandy Grave has the Ghost, and among some others, as well as the El Jaisa and the Dragon Zombie. The Dragon Zombie, of course, is not exclusive to the Sandy Grave, but it is one of the more notable encounters in that painting world. Whereas Nation of Fools definitely has some other notable enemies, like the Killer Clown and the Cobblines. Otherwise, you know, they both have fleamen, they both have armor knights, which, you know, I think is a very conscious design choice to sort of not make it clear that one painting world is above the other or harder than another when they're both available to you after a certain point. But at the same time, that can be a hindrance when thinking about design, where if you make a game open like that, you have to also think about you know, not making it too difficult and that balancing everything so that it works fine. Which, you know, I think they did well in this game. As I said, there are, you know, notable unique enemies for each painting world either way, so it still works out just fine. And here I cut out, exploring the rest of the places we have seen, because now we are going to go and face the boss, as well as, you know, explore this sort of vertical corridor. Here we find a new sort of skill move, the critical skill, which you push forward twice and then Y. It's a bit finicky to pull off on an Xbox D-pad, but it is very useful because it basically does a lot of damage. Depending on what weapon you're using, you get a different critical skill. Like with the Nebula, you get that thing where it sort of shoots up into the air. And now we're going to go face the boss. The door's closed, there's nothing in this room, music is normal as well. But then we, yeah, nothing in here, but then we pick up the cog, and this thing spawns. This is Legion. It is a gigantic orb composed of human corpses, or I guess just some type of corpse. I'm not sure if they're human, but they sure as hell look human. This boss has been featured in other Castlevania games, most notably Symphony of the Night, where it was called Grand Falloon and not Legion. In later Castlevania games, it has been featured as well. Dawn of Area of Sorrow for the Game Advance also had it, but in there it was still called Legion, if I recall correctly. The only game where it was called Grand Falloon was Symphony of the Night, but it still was pretty much the same boss, where basically you have to break off these parts of it and it'll reveal the true form, which is this sort of tentacle orb. And it'll just keep dropping these corpses and stuff. This is definitely one of the more like sick encounters of the game, because when you think about it, it's just this gigantic like body of bodies that just keep dropping, which is, you know, kind of insane to think about. Otherwise, it's not a very hard boss. Basically, once you've broken off all the pieces, it starts doing other attacks like this one, where you just kind of have to dodge it, because it rotates and then it sort of rotates back, and all you have to do is you know, move with it as it rotates. The other attack is it shoots lasers from all of its tentacles, but if you're in the position where I was, you can simply duck and they won't hit you, which, you know, is very cheap. But honestly, I've learned that you have to be kind of cheap with the bosses. If you can defeat the boss in a cheap way, go for it, because I feel like that is the better way. Either way, we finished off Legion. Not a very tough boss encounter if you know what you're doing. On my first tries with this guy, I absolutely had some trouble, because the you try to attack him from the bottom to get the bottom pieces off, and then you just kind of get overwhelmed by the massive amount of bodies. Either way, here I am just fast forwarding my grinding sequence with these guys. And this is basically what grinding is. I'm only showing this off now in a very sped up format, just to show you guys what it is like. In the future I will definitely cut out grinding sequences, but for this one I just felt like I wanted to show you guys what the grinding is like, even if it is sped up. Basically, enemies respawn every time you enter a room, so you know, find a room that has more than one of the enemy type you need to grind, and then just, you know, keep killing them until they drop, you know, whatever you need. In this case it is a new weapon. And you can see how many enemies I've killed there in the thing. And then here we go. He finally drops the Heaven Sword, which I will be showing off right here. It is one of my favorite weapons. It's not super strong, but what it does is basically you shoot a ranged sword projectile, which then comes back to you. It does damage both on the way out and on the way back, so you can stack damage and you can fire more than one at a time. It's incredibly useful. It really helps with a lot of encounters where you need some range. And if you combine it with like a strength up thing, you can get some insane amount of damage with it. The Heaven Sword would have been useful on the Legion fight, because you can hit many of his segments at once. But unfortunately I did not have the patience to grind for it beforehand. So I just I waited until after the fight. As you can see, it does a lot of damage, like, and the critical skill for it isn't anything special. It just shoots out one sword that does a bit more damage, unfortunately. Anyways, that is the end of this video. Leave a like if you like this video, leave a dislike if you dislike the video, and please comment why. I will see you guys next part. Have a good one.